Hey everyone. Hello everyone. I'm going to wait just a few more seconds to make sure that people who want to come here may make it. I had to switch originally I had planned to do it on my phone, but I went back to the computer, so I had to redo it because YouTube doesn't let you, at least not that I know of, set the live stream on your phone and then do it on your computer. It doesn't show up that way. Um, Also changed the picture, but today what we're going to be talking about is how I personally like to pick fish from the fish store, go over what I look for to ignore or to not buy, things like that. And then we're going to go into how I quarantine my fish. Um, and you're going to notice that my methods have a little are a little different from what you hear from other people. Um, I really do not believe in using medication prophylactically, as long as with an asterisk. I don't like the shotgun approach. I don't think it's useful um, unless you're moving a large volume of fish. So there's like the triple med combo. Hi Caroline, thanks for joining us today. There's a triple med combo that people talk about a lot on YouTube. Um, I don't really like that. So let's get started um, and start with what I like to pick or about what I like to look for in a fish at the fish store. So this is obviously going to depend a lot on where you are, what type of fish store, and how the fish store takes care of its fish. Walking in and looking at the whole panel of tanks, the biggest thing that I'm looking for now is number one, the fish that I'm interested in, do they have it? And number two, I'm looking for the general cleanliness of the tanks. If you see a fish store that has a lot of algae on the sides, that doesn't mean it's a bad fish store. It just means the owners don't find it very important to look after the glass sides. Now, I keep a lot of shrimp, and to be honest, I kind of get lazy and I let my tanks grow a bunch of algae on the sides. Telling myself that this is how my shrimps are going to eat. I don't think that seeing algae on the sides of an aquarium is a problem. I won't use that against buying fish or against a fish store. What I do find a problem with is seeing a lot of detritus on the bottom and seeing a lot of dead fish. Most of the time, fish stores do pretty well. They'll go through and remove the dead fish um, every day or every couple hours. So look for dead fish because dead fish signify that the shipments that they're getting might not be so well adjusted to the water in your local area. So, um, other than looking for dead fish, looking at the general health of the ones that are still alive is also very important. So, say you found the tank with all the fish that you want. Um, let's say it's a whole tank of tetras, and you're going through, and usually there'll be a couple different species in there, and you see the tetras sort of just staying in one little corner, and they're doing this where they swim like in place and they'll just kind of flicker their bodies around like that. So usually that means that they're stressed out. There's not probably not enough hiding spaces, not enough room to move about, or that they just got the shipment in. And of course, you can take a look at how many numbers there are. Fish stores, depending on the volume, can order anywhere from like 10 to 20 to 30 to 40. Um, but just looking at the general sort of behavior of the fish, tetras usually swim all around, right? They'll go left, right, up, down, everywhere. And if you are seeing that the tetras only stay in one little corner or one little hiding spot, Another possibility is that they have some sort of problem adjusting to your water at the fish store, or they are sick in some way. Usually, you can spot the sick fish because they don't school with the other tetras at the fish store in the tank. So if you see a lot of dead fish or a lot of sick fish, I would pass. I would pass that day. I wouldn't buy anything because chances are the ones that are healthy may fall sick in the next couple of days. Nature Wiz says, when do you know when your tetras are ready for reproduction? It depends on the species. So, for example, these glow light tetras, there's these little like brownish clear tetras with a really bright orange line that goes through them. They look very similar to cardinal tetras, except the color scheme is different, right? Those tetras usually come to the store fairly large because they're very easy to breed. Things like neon tetras almost always come to the store as juveniles. And of course, I'm speaking based on the things that I've seen in my local area. But neon tetras are almost always going to be juveniles. Cardinal tetras are almost always going to be juveniles. Rummy nose tetras almost always most fish are juveniles. And so when you take them back into your tank and you grow them up, you're going to notice that tetras females, and this is general because I don't know what species you're talking about, but in general, the females are much more plump. And if you look at them swimming towards you, right, they'll look like this with sort of the abdomen sides will sort of bulge out. And this is after, if you're feeding them very well, lots of frozen bloodworms or live food, lots of protein, and you feed them once or twice every single day. And then this is after a couple of months after you get them back from the fish store. From by then, you'll start to notice that the males don't get that shape. They'll look like fish like this, right? Their bottoms won't sort of come up like that. And so the males are usually smaller and thinner, and then the females are bigger and thicker. And then you'll see the males chase the females around, especially when you turn on the lights in the morning or as it gets darker in the afternoon. You'll see the males chase the females around, and you could trigger this depending on the species with a water change, feeding, change in lights, day cycle, night cycle, and using those clues would be how I use to breed tetras. I've bred the glow light tetras before. It's a challenge. Tetras are very hard to breed, and after I got the eggs, and the wigglers came out and they started, free swimming and everything. It was a challenge to keep them alive, and I think I went to like maybe 3 weeks or so before I just lost the entire batch. But what I'm going to do next is in the summer or in the spring, I'm going to look into breeding my cardinal tetras. So what I would recommend is you get the cardinal tetras or whatever tetras that you want to breed the fall or the winter before you want to breed them. So then in the spring, in the summer, you have this really long time to breed, to try to breed, to condition. And the added benefit is usually when you're breeding, you're in a small tank, right? So if you can keep the tank free of things like heaters, it's another way you could save on electricity and also sort of remove some extra factors that may cause you to change depending on the temperature or the way the heater is. Like you could affect the breeding of the tetras. In general, answer your question, females are bigger, thicker. When you notice there are breeding behavior in the tank, or if you notice that sort of sexual dimorphism. Going back to looking at the difference in um, going back to looking at how to pick up fish at the store, I never, okay, I never recommend going into a store and then just finding the fish you want and then telling the clerk, hey, I want a school, 6, 7 of these fish, and then just leaving. Always stand in front of the tank, watch them for 5 to 10 minutes, look at every single fish that you can sort of follow along with your eyes. Doesn't not only the ones that are the species that you want, but every other fish in that tank, and look for where the water inlets are coming from and where the drainage is coming out of. Because if you have a fish tank that's like a whole sort of stack, then a fish that's sick from the top can affect a fish on the bottom because they share a water system. And sometimes people use UV sterilizers, but I've noticed that if there is ick anywhere in there, you're going to come home with ick. It's going to be in the water. And even if your tetras or your fish that you get don't end up, you don't see that the day you buy the fish, when you come back, they're going to get sick. So I really always recommend looking around. And just so you know, ick is not a reason not to get the fish. It's very easily cured if you follow the steps of quarantine. Um, the hard part is trying to sort of look for other signs and to look at ick in a way that people see ick and they freak out and they're just like, I'm not going to get it. Um, for me, if the ick is just a couple dots on the fish, I'm fine with that. I know I'm going to go home. Uh, I'm going to quarantine them. I don't find that to be a problem. So Nature Wiz, what store do you get your tetras from? It depends on the tetra. I have ordered online from Aquahuna before, um, and I got some cardinal tetras from there, and I recently ordered some German blue rams, and both times they came in healthy. Um, they keep their water fairly soft. The pH is a little less than neutral to neutral, and I tested the water after, in the bag that they ship you the fish from, and I think there was a little bit of ammonia, which is to be expected if you're keeping the fish in such a tiny amount of water. But in terms of nitrates and nitrites, everything looked fine. Um, it was pretty fast shipping, I would say, and it's a flat rate shipping as of now where I'm when I'm doing the stream. So I got mine from Aquahuna, and they're pretty cheap. I would say they're probably one of the best price, most competitive prices online. A lot of times, stores online will sell you tetras cheap, but then you get to checkout and you realize that the shipping is like $50 or $70, and it's just like, if I wanted to buy them that expensive, I would have like I wouldn't have done it. So what about shrimp? How would you know how to see if shrimp are sick? For shrimp, I realize shrimp is a little different. In terms of ick, I've never had a shrimp get ick before. Even when I know that the tank they were in had an ick outbreak and the fish were getting sick up top, the shrimp never actually came down with ick. Looking at shrimp is hard. Shrimp is hard because one day they can be fine and the next day they're dead. You don't really see like problems, but there are a couple of signs that you can see. Number one is looking at the body of the shrimp. Do you notice that there is any sort of discoloration, white spots, or these little? It'll be actually in the flesh of the shrimp, and that's like when the mussels are rotting or when there's a bacterial infection and the shrimp can't get rid of it. If you've ever seen any of my Amano shrimp breeding series, I look at the babies under the microscope, and one of the biggest signs of disease is that when the babies have these sort of detritus, or these ugly little dirt, dust, muddy looking things attached to them. Not so much in the adults, because the adults, you can't really see them unless you're looking at them under the microscope, but you're looking for any sort of weird growth, usually on the underside. I don't know what giveaway that you're talking about, but um, I didn't say there was a giveaway. But for shrimp, um, there are certain things that can stay on the front of the shrimp, so like where the mouth parts are, and there'll be these little white things that will stick out. So you're gonna have to look very carefully at the front, at the mouth, where they are, and looking at the body, looking for white stuff, white parts in general. If you see a weird white spot, it's probably not good. It's probably not normal. And then there's another fungus or parasite, I can't remember, that will um, show up when there's really bad water. And it shows up as this sort of greenish, yellowish growth attachment on the swimmerets or the pleopods at the bottom abdomen of the shrimp. Shrimp, when you get home and you acclimate them, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes you get a bunch of really good shrimp and they'll live forever in your tank. Other times, um, the babies will shrimp. Like I said before, I've never actually had shrimp get ick, but if you want, I'm gonna go show you. This is methylene blue. This is what I use to treat ick. I also have another thing that I just ordered, the Ick X. You can see that it's still in the wrapping, so I'm gonna try this. But this has been working for me for years. And methylene blue is good because it treats ick, it treats fungal infections, and overall, like if you're breeding fish and say you're breeding angelfish or German blue rams or anything like that, where the father and the mother are laying eggs and you have to remove the eggs anywhere, add a little methylene blue in the water and you almost never have fungal problems, provided that you remove the unfertilized eggs. So for shrimp, this is safe. I've done this in a shrimp tank before. They've not had a problem. Methylene blue. It doesn't get as much, I guess, advertisement as something like the Ick X, but they're very, very similar. This will stain your silicone just like the Ick X. So overall, and I'll talk about this later in the stream, but I would always, when I get fish back in, I would always quarantine them, observe them, and a lot of times I would just go ahead and just add methylene blue because it's just so useful for me. So there's a story about how I went to a fish store and I was staying there for quite a while, just looking at every single fish in there. And I don't know if like the clerks there were sort of being like, what's going on? But it takes me a long time to get my fish at the fish store. I always block out like an hour there because I always look at every single tank, every single fish. Well, okay, not every single tank, but every single fish in the tank that I want. And overall, if the fish is healthy, swimming really well, you don't notice a lot of problems in the other fish in the tank, you can go ahead and look and get it. Another thing you can do is you can ask the clerk, and sometimes this might not work, but you can ask him or her to feed the tank just a little bit, just to see like what the feeding response is of the fish. And sometimes, if the fish have been there for a while, if you hold your hand up to the top of the tank and just wave it around like this, the fish know that it's time for feeding. Um, so if the fish have been there for a while, sort of do this sprinkling motion, it works. Fish will come up, especially things like guppies, because they're fearless. Guppies don't even care if you have a net in the tank; they'll just go up to the tank anywhere. Another thing that you want to look for is Caroline Morgan said, I always roll into the fish store like, y'all, give me time. I'm here to stare. Exactly. Almost every time the fish store guy comes up to me, he's like, yo, can I help you with anything? I'll say, not right now. I'm just looking, but thank you so much. I'll get you if I do want to have a question or want to get something in. Like 30 minutes later, I'm like, hey, I'm back. I liked the Sayamano shrimp, or I like the tetras that you guys have. Another thing is generally fish stores get fish in and they're quite emancipated, especially if like current situation in the US right now, our supply chain has been broken for a very long time. It is getting better, but a lot of times you're either not going to get any fish or you get very, very small, young, emancipated fish, and they'll come in with a very, very sunken belly. As much as I want to go ahead and take that chance on them, usually what happens is the fish are already very, very stressed out from getting bagged, shipping, coming over, adjusting to the water and everything, that if you take them back home, a lot of times they die, especially tetras. Tetras are very hard to, it's always a hit or miss with tetras. Some, like cardinal tetras, I got at my local fish store. I think I got like 15. On the second or third day, 10 of them were gone. I had 5 left, and the 5 that I had left were not eating. They're not doing anything. I tried baby brine shrimp, tried any sort of powdery flake foods, and nothing worked. They weren't really eating. And then I ordered from Aquahuna 10 or so, I think. Maybe it was 20. But the cardinal tetras there were fine. They arrived about the same size, but they ate pretty well. Another thing you can ask your fish store is whether or not they're wild caught. In my experience, wild caught cardinal tetras are very, very hard to raise, and they don't adjust the best. There are certain things like Project Piaba out there. Um, think their marketing is, if you buy from us and we supply the wild tetras or cardinal tetras, that gives the native fishermen something to do. It gives them their livelihood, and so they'll, instead of cutting down the forest and destroying the habitat, the native fishermen will protect the habitat, and there'll be legislation to protect the Amazon rainforest. I, the first time I was at the fish store, I did just that, and I feel like I've paid my dues, because, like, as much as I love cardinal tetras and supporting the wild, I want my tetras live. So I ended up getting farm raised from Aquahuna, and they did quite well. That's going to be your decision, though. It's going to be your decision. If you want to support Project Piaba, go ahead, do it. Just know that depending on where you are in the U.S., and this could also be a supply chain problem, but depending on where you are in the U.S., there might be a lot more deaths. There could be a lot of deaths. The last thing about fish stores that I want to talk about is knowing when to go to the fish store. Most of the time, the fish stores get their shipment in somewhere between Wednesday and Friday. And that's in preparation for the weekend, because the weekend is, their best selling days. People always come in during the weekends. It's packed every time I go. What that means is on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, when your fish just come in and you get the fish, the best thing about it is the selection. Right? You're going to have the newest shipments every single week. The bad thing about it is you might get fish that aren't as healthy. Whereas if you come earlier in the week, they've lasted a whole week before, sort of in your water, before coming home with you. So that's a trade-off that you're going to have to think about whenever you go to the fish store. Again, my biggest thing is, do not be afraid to stare at that fish tank for a long time, trying to figure out what sort of whether or not to get the fish or which fish you want to do. And it doesn't hurt to ask, hey, can you pick this specific fish? Sometimes fish store guys will do it for you. Other times they'll say, we don't guarantee that. We can't do that for everything. And just respect that and say, okay, fine, but like, please make sure you get the healthy ones, or please make sure blah, blah, blah. And most of the time, since you're the customer, they'll be more than happy to accommodate. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and I don't even know if this is going to last a whole hour, is the different medications that I use to quarantine my new fish. And I'll tell you about my setup, and then I'll talk about the medications. So I quarantine in a 10-gallon tank, bare bottom, no decorations except for maybe one or two like terracotta pots. just to give the shrimp or the fish some hiding spaces. And the water in that tank is almost always going to be just regular tap water or whatever you use to change water with, because you want to make sure that the fish or the shrimp are adapted to your water parameters. So I fill it up and I have a sponge filter on there, a heater if the temperature is low, and I'll think about adding a light if I do. Usually only turn the light on when I'm actually looking through the tank and making sure none of the shrimp or the fish have problems. So I'll acclimate them. I usually drip acclimate, put them into a bucket, drip acclimate, pour them in. And the first couple of days, I will not add medication. I do not add medication unless I see a problem, except for the methylene blue, right? I will add a couple drops of the methylene blue in the very beginning, because it's just, if you have ick or if it's in the water, you're going to nip that problem at the bud. And if you do that, it's going to, number one, help your fish transition to and get accustomed to your water much faster, and they do not have to worry about any sort of parasitic ick weakening their immune system. And afterwards, if I see, and with the methylene blue, you put it in, and then the next, wait a day, wait another day, and then you do a water change if you can, and then add some more methylene blue. Once you're done with that, if you see a bacterial infection, okay, what I do is I do a water change, make sure I don't see any more blue methylene blue in there anymore, because from then on, we're going to have to treat with antibiotics. I do not break out the antibiotics, and here I have 3 different ones. Let's see. I have General Cure. General Cure is metronidazole and praziquantel. This is not for bacterial infections on the outside. It's not really going to help that much. Okay, it's going to be for inside infections and also parasitic infections, because the praziquantel helps loosen the hold that the parasites have on your shrimp, or on your, not on your shrimp, on your fish on the inside. I do not use General Cure for problems that I see on the outside of the fish. And how are you going to know if there are problems on the inside of the fish? Is if you notice that your fish aren't eating, they're super bloated. If they are the opposite, super unbloated, like sunken in belly, or if they're not excreting any waste, or the waste looks funny. Usually, like, say if you feed red colored flakes, your fish excrement is going to be some sort of shade of red to brown, right? So if you're feeding red flakes and then you see that it's like a white stringy substance, or if it's just like really watery and gross, consider adding General Cure then. The second thing is erythromycin. This is getting a little harder to get. I don't know. I think this is given to me by a friend of mine, and I don't know how they got the erythromycin, because I wasn't really able to find much of it online. But in terms of the outside, you're going to have 2 different ones, Furin 2 and erythromycin. These guys, they always come with directions on the back, right? So for the erythromycin, it is for each 10 gallons of water, you're going to empty 1 packet into the aquarium. And since I quarantine in a 10-gallon aquarium, I'll just empty 1 packet. And then you want to reduce or repeat the dose after 24 hours, wait another 24 hours. So after the third day, after the third day, you do a 25% water change. I always dose my antibiotics based on what they tell you to dose on the actual container. I do not, never ever have I ever dosed one packet and call it a day. Um, that's just not very responsible, in my opinion. Um, there's a reason, because if you dose antibiotics and you don't kill whatever is affecting your fish, you, a lot of times we need to maintain a certain concentration of antibiotics in the water in order to kill all the bacteria. And if you don't do that, what happens is you're teaching the bacteria to how to defend itself against your antibiotic. And this gets into a lot of higher concepts of like biology or medicine, but in general, bacteria may potentially mutate so that they are resistant to your antibiotics. And we already have a problem with antibiotic resistance. Um, so I don't really feel like contributing to more of that. As for whether or not, with like the difference between these two, they're pretty similar. I don't see a difference in them in terms of treating fish. What I do know is like if you use erythromycin, make sure you have the full dose available, the full treatment. Same thing with the furin, and don't like do 1 day of furin, 1 day of erythromycin, 1 day of furin again. Just stick with something. Don't add them at the same time, etc. One of the things is when fish get sick, um, I want to caution people on just shotgunning everything against them, or even feeling the need to add medication. A lot of times, if you have a fish that is suddenly stopped eating, is laying at the bottom of the tank, you cannot see any sort of problems on the outside of this fish. The stomach looks fine, if not a little skinny because it stopped eating. I don't feel like we have enough indication for adding an antibiotic. It could just as likely be that your fish has gotten some sort of organ failure or organ impairment. You don't know that. You don't have any signs of bacterial infection. It could also be a virus or a fungus, which, by the way, if this is a virus, none of these medications is going to help. So I think at the end of the day, we have to accept that fish, just like people, can get sick from non-infectious reasons. And most of the time, when a fish stops eating and you don't see any problems on it, it's very likely that the fish will pass away from it. And it's very likely that it was a factor that you couldn't control. Now, if you just did a water change and all your fish stopped eating and they're gasping for air, chances are you forgot to add dechlorinator. That's on you. But I'm saying, like, if you're in a community tank, everyone else is hungry, healthy, not hungry. Everyone else is healthy, and your fish suddenly disappears from view, starts hiding, is not their normal self. You don't see a problem with it. That might not be your fault. So what happens if you're in a community tank and you see a fish suddenly get sick? You can see like a sore on the side, or problems with its fins, stuff like that. So what I would do is immediately isolate this fish, isolate any other fish that I suspect will have a problem, and then I do a large water change in the community tank. This is to make sure that whatever is in the water, whatever is the problem, we can decrease the risk of infecting other fish. Then I would go through and say, okay, does this look fuzzy or kind of like spread out and starry? Because usually that signifies a fungal infection. And in that case, methylene blue. We don't really have that many fungal medications anyways, but or is it like a big sort of white or reddish mass on them? If it's like flat or like sort of um, bulged out, usually like on the lips or on the mouth, or in the gills, on the fins or the sides and the tails, that's probably a bacterial infection. And at that point, number one, keep clean water, very clean water. The fish has a chance of defeating the infection by itself, but usually I'll just go ahead and add the medication. I don't, for me, I don't add medication unless I have a need to, I see a problem, but I will not hesitate to add medication when I do see the problem. Does that make sense? Like, don't treat unless you have the signs staring in your face. That's going to help you a lot. Number one, saves a lot of money. And number two, it's just responsible, right? You don't want to subject your fish to more medications if it's already sick that isn't going to help it. In terms of the length of treatment for ick, I recommend a week to 2 weeks. And if it is ick, clean out your entire tank. You can keep the shrimp in there, but any other fish, plecos, other types, other species, anything like that, if you see ick, clean out your tank. It's in the water already if you already see ick. You quarantine the entire tank. You can do, fish can survive in a bucket or in a 5-gallon bucket if you have a heater, a bubbler, for a while. Don't worry about like, oh, I had a 30-gallon tank, but now I'm going to put them into a 10-gallon tank. Oh, what's going to happen? If you keep it bare bottom, it's going to be just like at the fish store, right? It's temporary. You're going to do it for a week or two, and then you're going to move them back. It's not a problem. Now, other things like bacterial problems, it really depends on how long you see the bacterial problem. I would say one course of treatment at the very latest, or at the very least, and then observing are things getting better? Are things getting worse? And the last thing that I want to caution you on is to post your problem on a forum or on Facebook in one of those groups and say like, help, what is wrong with my fish? The reason why you should not do that, and I would recommend that you go online and look up symptoms of things that you suspect, is because everyone has a different opinion on Facebook. I posted a picture or a video of a mosquito larvae, okay, and it's moving around in the water. And half the people were like, you have planaria. You have bloodworms. Congratulations, it's a free snack. Other people were saying things like, oh no, it's a parasite. Get it out of your fish tank. And I'm just like, guys, I told you it was a mosquito larvae. So things so don't rely on forums or Facebook for information. And the second thing is, if you do want to send pictures to someone else or videos to someone else, say you have a mentor at your local Raleigh, not your local aquarium society, and I'm part of the Raleigh Aquarium Society, but you really want to make sure that your photos are clear, your videos are clear. And so it's nice to get a second opinion, nice to get other people to help you along, but make sure the people that you're asking are people you trust, people who's done this for many years. So I think for overall, that's all I wanted to say on medications. Once again, methylene blue, it's not a magic bullet, but it's going to help out with a lot of common problems. And then I have the erythromycin or the furin 2. You can just pick one of them. You don't have to get both of them. And then lastly, the general cure for internal parasitic infections. So Caroline Morgan asked, "What is your opinion on the salt plus raising the temperature way of treating ick?" So for me, because I have access to methylene blue and I've used it many times, I've um, not done the salt plus raise the temperature. I have raised the temperature to try to get that life cycle going, but I don't haven't done salt. And another reason is, well, I have a lot of planet tanks, and the salt kind of hurts the plants. And in either case, if I'm going to be quarantining in a bucket or a 10-gallon tank, I I have enough methylene blue to dose a 10-gallon tank. The other thing is, like with salt, it's just another expense for me, and I ended up doing this, getting this instead of the salt. I know a lot of people use salt, and I know that it works because uh, my friends use salt. Um, but in general, I have not done it. I can't speak that much about it. Oh, and then I'll give you guys a little update about what's happening currently. Um, Today, I had a subscriber email me and tell me that so we've been talking about breeding Amano shrimps, and I don't want to make this into like another Amano shrimp live stream because I talk about shrimps all the time. But I had a subscriber give me an update about how he had transitioned the Amano shrimps back into freshwater, and and he was getting ready for the next batch. He had like 300 plus babies, which was really awesome for him. I was really happy for him. But he had the setup of like a bare bottom tank. There was live phytoplankton. He was feeding powdered foods, and he was using a sponge filter plus the heater. And when he was getting ready to tear down the tank, redoing it, cleaning everything, he realized that the sponge filter, you know how a sponge filter has that sort of uh, pipe at the top, right, that the bubbles come out of? Inside were like around 10 little Amano shrimps, just juveniles in there. So he was just like, I just want to let you know these juveniles were inside the sponge filters, and they were they were there for at least 10 days, for about 10 days. And so I just want to let you know that these juveniles can survive in salt water. You don't have to immediately move them to fresh water. And so I thought that was really cool because it was never something that I had thought about. I don't know if I've like actually ever killed any because I wasn't looking for them, but um, this is something that I feel is worth a mention because it's something that he found out, I think, by accident, but could help a lot of other people and could help save the lives of many other Amano shrimps. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor to any other questions that you guys have. If you guys have any random questions, it doesn't have to be um, about what we talked about today. Nature Wiz, what is the largest amount of fish babies at once? What fish are you talking about? Because that will depend on the species. Are you asking me about what is the largest amount of like fish that I've raised at a time, or what kind of fish are you asking me about? Guppies. So for guppies, I would say if you remove the female and let her lay her, well, not eggs, but let her give birth in her own separate container, and you stop the female from eating the baby guppies, you are looking at like 100% or 90 to 100% of the babies will survive to adulthood. Um, Guppies are incredibly hardy. Um, they can tolerate things like brackish water. They can tolerate very, very low temperatures, very high temperatures. That's why they're one of the greatest starter fish. In terms of numbers, I think the largest clutch that I've ever had was around like 40 guppies at a time, and that's all coming from one small mother, right? That's pretty impressive for me. Um, but in guppies, like, I don't know if people know this, but coming like day two of their birth, they can already nibble on like flake food that you put on the surface of the water. They're incredibly adapted to hitting the ground running as soon as they as soon as they're birthed. And that's one of the coolest things about live bears. um, there's versus the egg layers, they have less babies, but nature has said, you have less babies, but these babies are much more stronger in terms of the things that they can eat, their size, a lot of times. I think the coolest fish that I've ever like bred was our bettas. I don't think any other fish out there can sort of beat the intricacies in this like sort of ritual of breeding bettas. Like, what kind of other fish makes a bubble nest, can constantly pick up the eggs and put them back into the bubble nest. You can see the male and the female sort of do this little dance. It's just really cool. And so like the betta and the betta family, like things like gouramis, I think are the coolest fish. And plus, like, they have a lot of babies. They're a little bit harder to raise than guppies. I would say you would need like infusoria, you would need baby brine shrimp, stuff like that. But bettas are probably like one of the coolest things that I've ever bred. Another thing is probably the angelfish. The angelfish has in these like South American cichlids in general. Angelfish are really, really cool. They can move the eggs around on different surfaces. Usually they like to spawn on like flat, smooth surfaces. So if you have like an Amazon sword, mine really likes to spawn on the Amazon sword. But I remember I was going to talk about something, but then I suddenly like forgot about something. Um, I was going to talk about, oh yeah, what's currently happening. So I got some German blue rams recently. They've just finished quarantining, and so once I edit through all of that footage, I think I'm going to do an unboxing on where I got them from, Aquahuna. And so I feel like I'm going to release that. I'm still trying to think of how to best shoot the DIY microscope from your phone in a laser pen video from my past live stream, because if I were to, I take all my videos using my phone. So if I use my phone, I'd have to borrow someone else's phone, or do I borrow their phone to do the microscope? You know. Anyways, what college do you study biology at? I went to UNC. And I had a lot of fun. UNC is one of those places where all the professors are passionate about what they do, and you can feel it when they're teaching. And so I did a lot of tutoring in college, did a lot of like public speaking, and I think that it's helped me uh, speak very, very, at least hopefully fluently, and without any sort of awkward pauses. Um, in both, at work, or if, say, I'm doing a live stream. The the other thing that I was doing in my fish room is I'm trying to fatten up my cardinal tetras. The cardinal tetras are probably going to be my number one project this 2021 year. I really want to breed the cardinal tetras, and you know whenever it starts raining, um, the the thing that I want to do is just collect as much rainwater as I can. And I have a lot of these milk jugs and iced tea cartons, these 1 gallon containers, and I'm keeping them for when I have enough, and I'll just pour them in because for tetras, especially cardinal tetras, they really prefer almost zero hardness in the water, a little slightly acidic. You can add some peat moss or any sort of botanicals in there. And so the the thing is, I've tried breeding tetras in the sort of cube 3 gallon ish tanks, and I've realized that the tetras don't really like such a small space. So I'm going to start breeding them in a 10-gallon tank. They're a little bit larger, more room for them to burrow around, and with the 10-gallon tank, I'm unable to add that sort of egg crating at the very bottom, and what I'll have to rely on is a bunch of moss. And the problem with that is the fish, if they learn that their eggs are in the moss, they're going to go around and root around the moss and just eat all the eggs. And so you really get that decreased number of eggs, but you give them a more natural environment. And that's sort of the trade-off that I'm trying to think of a way that I can like save more eggs in a 10-gallon tank so we get the best of both worlds. I might end up having to order these like um, extra large. Oh, sorry, I said egg carton crates, but they're not egg carton crates. They're these like crochet skeletons. Like they look very small. I have them in my cherry barb breeding video and also my zebrafish breeding video. My zebrafish breeding video was like one of the earliest things that I put out because I just felt like with zebrafish, they're used so often in biology that there's a lot of documentation on how to breed them. And so I actually, before that video, I asked my friend who had worked in a zebrafish lab how they bred the zebrafish. And so she told me all the details. And so that way was sort of how I I took her advice and I followed it to the T. Of course, I didn't have the fancy lab equipment, so I had to, substitute out a lot of things. But that was really cool. Want to try to make a saltwater tank? If my wallet allows me to, yes. But right now, I do not have the space or the time or the funds to make a saltwater tank. One of the coolest, one of the, I think, one of the, if people have Netflix, I recommend they go and watch Chasing Coral. I think that's the name of the documentary. It's free if you have Netflix, and it's all about how global warming has caused a lot of coral bleaching, and it's a pretty sad, somber movie. But let me just make sure it's called Chasing Coral. Yeah, so it is Chasing Coral on Netflix, and I think there might be like other places you can watch it if you don't have Netflix, like maybe YouTube. Um, And Caroline, I'm going to look up my own video and see what was in there just to make sure that I'm not telling you the wrong name for them because it's been a while since I got mine. Let me make sure. Oh God, one of the things is when you end up having a bunch of videos on your channel, all the thumbnails look the same. And you're just like, I don't remember which one this one was. But let me make sure. Zebrafish, part 2. Oh, it's embroidery mesh, plastic canvas. I don't know. Embroidery, is that the thing where you like move your needles around and you have like yarn or something? The embroidery mesh is what it's called. How many seasons, episodes are there? It's like a movie. It's like an hour and some minutes, less than 2 hours, so you can watch it. Um, you're it's a it's a somber movie. It kind of, after you watch it, you're just like, corals are awesome, but it really sucks that global warming is a thing and there's a lot of coral bleaching. Without going too much into sort of ruining the movie, if you really want to watch it, but there are some shots where you're just like, dang, this hits me right in the feels. Aquaterrarium with ants on the terrarium. Okay, so Nugget, I think what you're asking is about my prior ant videos. As of now, I don't have the plans of continuing with the ants. I think I put those out like years ago when I first started the channel, when it was still called Addicted to Nature. And I think that as of right now, my hobby is in the aquarium hobby, and so I don't have any um, 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 plans to get any more ants. I don't want to do too much and then have a issue of um, not being able to take care of my pets. Oh, that's knitting. Thank you, Caroline. I have no idea. I'm not very like like aware of things outside of the fish hobby. I've if if I remember Addicted to Nature. That gives me so much nostalgia. Thank you, Nature Wiz. You are one of the people that has helped me get so many subscribers. Like, I can't believe I have more than 1,000 subscribers. I remember the days when like I've recently gained a lot of subscribers, like in the past year, and two of the videos that did very well were the how to remove algae from your aquarium video with hydrogen peroxide, and of course the Amano shrimp breeding series. So I don't know like at what time that you subbed, but when I was Addicted to Nature, I think I was like still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this channel, and so I sort of aimed for like a relatively broad name or topic. But then as I got older and I started looking at like these different things, I was just like, aquariums are really what I want to do, and that I want to go forth with. So I decided to change my name. But Addicted to Nature was a good name. Also, I found out that there was another YouTube channel called Addicted to Nature, and I was just like, we can't have that. We can't have that. We have to have a special name, Avatar Aquatics, and Addicted to Nature game. Oh my gosh, my friends who know my YouTube channel, or who they find it. Sometimes they just find it. I don't understand how you can just randomly find my channel. It's a pretty small channel, so I don't understand how. But they still make fun of my Addicted to Nature name. They tease me about it, but I'm just like, whatever. It is what it is. Um, for the future, I want to do a lot more breeding videos. Like for the Amano shrimp, it's one of the coolest things that I've ever done. Um, it's just like that that project has helped me realize what I want to do when on YouTube in this hobby. Like I want to educate other people with these longer videos that are full of information. I know a lot of people like end up clicking out before the video finishes, but there are a lot of people that watch to the end because the the information that I present isn't things that you're going to find on other YouTube videos. People, the goal is I just want to make enough from ad revenues or like other venues on YouTube to be able to support the the hobby. I'm not trying to become a multimillionaire with YouTube because frankly you can't unless you have like millions of subscribers. But I want my videos to be there for someone who is really into breeding that specific thing, and they've scoured the internet and they realize everyone's saying the same thing, they're repeating the same thing over and over again, but no one has like these other issues that they ran into. A lot of it is troubleshooting. Like if X doesn't go as planned, how do you figure out or how do you make an educated guess on what is wrong? So those are the types of videos I make. I know not everyone likes watching a 20-minute, 30-minute long video. And some of I think my last video was 48 minutes, but I'm put them in there for people who are there to learn, who need the information. What was your first ever video if you had an old channel before Addicted to Nature? Oh, so this is actually my only channel. Addicted to Nature was what this channel used to be called. So my very first video, I think it was like a DIY flute, PVC flute video, but I've only ever had one channel. You can change the name of your YouTube channel. Let me see. Let's scroll. Nope. Oh, my very, very first channel video was growing cucumbers and transplanting cucumbers. And then I made a lot of ant videos. And then I made a betta fry under the microscope video. And then I made a PVC flute video. And I think that video was the one video that like gave like to this day, I think it has like the biggest, one of the highest views on my channel. It's like 22K. But then gradually I started making more and more fish videos. One of the things that I want to talk about in the future is CO2. Like there are a lot of things that we can talk about here with CO2, and CO2 is not for everyone, but I think either I'm going to do it as a video or a live stream, because a live stream is like much more chill because I'll think through the different things that I want to talk about, sort of plan it out to last about an hour or so, and then I'll just sit down and have a conversation with the people on, or I'll sit down and talk about something. Whereas a video, I would say like 70-80% of the time you're editing. You could be done with the video already, but you still got to edit a lot. And so depending on, how much time I have, like right now, I've already finished shooting the unboxing video. I just got to edit it, hopefully during sometime this weekend. So pros and cons for both. I don't really like editing because I'm very bad at it. But for now, I think since we're already at an hour and 4 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to end this live stream. The next time I'll usually, hopefully, always have a live stream sort of reminder at least an hour or 2 hours before I hop on, so that, if you're on YouTube anywhere within that time, you can go ahead and, click wait or let me know. All right. Have a good night, everyone. I'm going to go back to studying. Peace out. Thanks for being here. Oh, my most viewed video was the banishing algae video, and it had 25K. Yeah, that was a very recent video, and I'm happy that I was able to help people with that. There are other things I want to talk about in algae, so we'll probably save it for part of um, a Planet Tank uh, live stream. So hopefully something that'll include CO2, algae, plants. I want to do that because I have a lot to say about stuff like that. But have a good night, everyone.